This episode contains material that might be triggering for some. If you need to stop the podcast at any time to take care of yourself, please do so.
If you need support, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988. Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
And welcome to Mega Q&A number 3. Which reminds me, did you know that Count Dracula, not Count Dracula, nice. The Count from Sesame Street, like
Yeah.
is based on an actual myth about vampires.
Oh.
That they have to count things. Like the way you could get away from a vampire was like spread a handful of rice out on the ground because they'd have to stop and count the grains of rice.
I did not know that. My son is obsessed with the Count from Sesame Street. So.
Well, there you go. Oh my god. Super loud motorcycle just went by. Thanks, friend. Anyway, sorry. I apparently am in my distractible phase of the day. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to reorient myself and everyone else to Mega Q&A, number 3. Before we launch into anything else, I do want to take a second to say thank you to our new patron, Allie. Thank you so much for supporting us and the podcast this way. If you would like to also get shouted out on a future podcast episode like Allie, you can go ahead and do that through finding the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/DBTandme, right?
Yeah,
Did I get that right?
I think that's right. You did that off the top of your head. Very good.
I did.
Thank you, Allie, for being a patron.
Yes, thank you. And for this month's promotion, we do want to remind everybody to review the book. We know wonderfully large quantities of you guys have purchased the book. Thank you very much for that. I have achieved my one goal, which was to cross the specific threshold at which Michelle and I get a tiny bit more money for every single book because I was proud of myself for negotiating it. I had never negotiated a thing in my life, so that was a thing of great pride for me. But we love to see your words as much, if not more. So please take a moment. It helps with the algorithms. It helps with, I don't know, us feeling warm and fuzzy.
Yeah. And it helps other people feel confident purchasing
there you go.
the book. You know, if they don't know who we are, they've never listened to the
That's
podcast.
True. Why would strangers buy?
Yeah, exactly. They're just looking up books about DBT, and what plays a big factor for many people in what they purchase is the number of reviews and how many stars basically those reviews have. So even if you don't actually write up like a review, say on Amazon,
rate and review,
but rating helps.
Yeah.
All of that stuff helps the book get found. Like it's more likely to pop up higher up in the search the more reviews it has. It just makes it more visible, generally speaking.
I've just realized I launched into this like a regular Q&A and didn't do a regular intro. Was I supposed to do a more regular intro?
This is the perfect intro. Yeah, exactly.
Excellent.
We're just doing promotion, shouting out our patron.
And
yeah,
do we want to mention, where'd my brain just go? The awesome people who gave us a code so people get money off when they buy books at their
you want
place.
to talk about the Guilford Press code too? Yeah. I mean, why not?
There we go. Guilford Press. That's the thing. I don't know why I'm just excited about everything today. And there was so little written that I'm like, I'm surely missing something. And then my brain is just going around. Anyway, yes, if you go to, see, now I've forgotten.
It's Guilford.com.
Guilford. There we go.
GUILFORD.com.
Yeah. Right? One L? Yes.
Yep. And the code is DBT me.
DBT me.
That
I remember because that's fun. Anyway, go and get money off of lots and lots and lots of books. So many fucking books.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I think we're ready to launch in.
With a really rambly, ridiculous lead in because it's been a hot minute. Guys, okay, sorry, Michelle.
Yeah.
My life has been such a fucking wild shit show, guys. Anyway, It's amazing I have a brain between my shoulder blades anymore.
Yeah,
It's been some of the craziest 6 weeks of the entirety of my lived existence on the professional world with my clinic. So bear with me. I feel like I've lost half of my brain cells in sleep deprivation and stress.
Yeah, it's been about, I think, 2-ish months since we maybe last recorded, which was when we recorded with Sarah. That was a while ago before we released that episode. So yeah, Kay and I are a little rusty today. But we're happy to be here with all of you.
We are.
Excited to get this episode out. And I'll get going with the first one, I guess.
Here you go.
Okay, it says, "Hi, everybody. I normally wouldn't post, and I would reach out to use my skills coach, but I don't want to be a burden. I'm trying to use skills to better my relationship, but my friend said some hurtful things, and I'm not sure what skills I can use so I don't ruin this relationship. Any advice?"
Wonderful question. Very sweet and thoughtful. Also, pardon me while I take a brief diversion onto a soapbox that I've been standing on of late, which is the gentle and emphatic reminder that everyone is a burden. Everybody. All of us are burdens. More sometimes, less sometimes, more in some relationships, less in other relationships. It's the whole reason that we talk about having a support system, right? If we think about logically the concept of a support system, that's something that holds something up, right? In other words, bears a burden. Anyway, I'm just really trying to normalize the idea of being a burden. I hear from so many people, myself included, in my own brain, much of the time before I started this particular soapboxing, like that same desire, right, that you, listener, are espousing of not wanting to be a burden. And I witnessed that taking a toll on people's willingness to engage with their support network, right? It's like we build this beautiful thing to help support us when we're a burden and then never want to test drive it. By actually allowing ourselves to be one. So a gentle invitation, I suppose, to, instead of trying not to be a burden, being aware of the fact that we're all burdens and engaging in your support system mindfully. But that's just my soapbox of the moment. Also, note that Michelle handles some good interpersonal skill suggestions below. So I wanted to instead suggest some things that you can do to help yourself be in a better place, perhaps for talking with your friend. So first and foremost, if you can find a wise mind state, that is always a great place to come to these sorts of things. Come to these things from. That is an awkward fucking sentence, Kate. Let's try that again. That is a lovely state of mind to be in when approaching conversations like this, because you're not just wholesale lost in your emotion mind, but you're not discounting it. Same thing with your reason mind, right? Being in that balanced state really helps us communicate more, in alignment, I would say, with ourselves and with our intentions. You might also want to practice willing hands or even self-soothing before or during the conversation. That can look like having a fidget potentially, or something, wearing something that you like the smell of, or other things that help you stay grounded and present in the conversation and less activated. And another thing that might be helpful is giving check the facts a go to remember what you actually know versus what you're telling yourself is a story. This is not a specific accusation. This is just a recognition, again, of human nature. We are all telling ourselves stories all the time. That is an unavoidable way that humans, like, that's how we interpret the world. It's part and parcel to the whole human gig. But we do need to take a moment sometimes and pause and be aware of where knowledge ends and the story begins. So we can see where our choices essentially are coming into the matter. So, yeah, I think so. Yeah. Hey, we must be back at it.
I caught that too.
To you, Michelle, to you.
All right. I like where you were going there, Kate, about how we all tell ourselves stories. And when I take what this listener said and I think about what is the story this listener appears to be telling themselves, when they say, my friend said some hurtful things and I'm not sure what skills I can use so I don't ruin this relationship, I was like, it sounds like the story there is that I'm worried that if I really let this friend know how those hurtful things impacted me, then I fear that there's going to be potentially devastating consequences. Like, I want to approach this. I want to be honest, And the story I'm telling myself is that that means something bad is going to happen. And I'm trying to prevent something bad from happening. So with that, I would encourage this listener to really think about what the goal is here, what the purpose is. If you do use your skills and you do approach your friend who said the hurtful things and you want to address it, depending on what your goal is, it's going to really shift what you focus on in the conversation. And this is one of the things I really like about the interpersonal effectiveness module as a whole is that it guides you on what skills to use depending on what you want out of interactions. So in this listener's case, like if the goal is more or less like, I just want to understand like where my friend was coming from when they said those hurtful things. This relationship is really important to me. I desperately want it to continue. And in order to do that, I may need to really try to, again, get a sense of like where this was coming from for this person. You're probably going to use some give. But if the focus of the conversation is, you know what, I need to be really real and honest about how those things hurt me that they said. Like, I want to make sure that I name, hey, ouch, like that wasn't okay for me that you said that. That's going to look more like fast. You can, of course, mix and match and blend the two and have a little bit of both. It's possible, but I think it's important to have clarity on like, what do I really want to prioritize here? Do I want to prioritize trying to make amends and understand, or do I want to prioritize really like protecting myself and sticking up for what I believe is right and like saying my truth? So that's going to really shift what direction you go in. The other thing that, we don't know here, maybe you do or don't know, is whether or not your friend said those hurtful things intentionally or unintentionally. That's probably also going to inform what direction you go in. If it's like, well, they said this thing and it hurt me, but I really don't think they were meaning to hurt me, that's different than like, no, I think they wanted to push a button. And they did. That's going to also be something that I think is important to factor in here with how you approach this friend. But I think language here is really important. And you picked up on it, Kate, when they were kind of introducing and saying like, well, I would normally not post this and I normally would reach out to my skills coach, but I don't want to be a burden, right? Like you picked up on that term there. I really picked up on, so I don't ruin this relationship. Guess what, listener? You are not responsible for how the other person receives what you say. Like, do your best, right, to be skillful. Do your best to treat the other person respectfully, no matter what. But then if for any reason they decide that they are done with you after this and the relationship gets ruined, that wasn't on you. That's on how they receive what you deliver. So yeah, deliver it as best you can, but I would really encourage you to not have that as a goal of like, I just want to do anything I can so that the relationship doesn't get ruined. No, think about, again, like I was saying a moment ago, think about whether you want to like, again, try to have understanding here for the other person or whether you want to really like speak up for yourself and then let the rest go. Because, yeah, you are not solely responsible for the outcome of whether this relationship continues or whether it doesn't. That's what I got.
I like it. Oh, excuse me. All right, on to the next one. How do you deal with people you don't feel deserve your kindness or even empathy because of how badly they treat people you love? My husband's stepdad constantly belittles, is condescending, and makes backhanded remarks about my husband to him in front of everyone in the family. Sometimes he will even say things about him to me when we're alone. For example, I don't know how you deal with him. My husband doesn't say anything to these remarks in the moment, but will get quiet and close in on himself in the conversation, and will later tell me everything he should have said. My husband loves his mother and thinks that if he doesn't get along with his stepdad, that his mom will choose his stepdad's side. I try to defend my husband in these conversations, but his stepdad very quickly gets loud and mean and will say anything to quote-unquote win the argument. I don't want to cause a rift in the family or embarrass my husband by saying something, but I can't keep sitting back and watching this unfold. Sometimes his stepdad is nice, but I don't forget the mean things that he's said. I try to be present during these times and react only to the situation at hand, but it's hard to pretend to be nice when he hurts my husband so much. What should I do?
Yeah, my initial impression reading this, I was just like, whew, there's a lot of triangulation going on here. Because this listener feels kind of pulled in, and maybe at times is being pulled in by the stepdad about his feelings towards their husband. Right? So yeah, it's tricky to navigate situations like this, but what I would recommend as far as how to navigate it is talking with the stepdad, ideally one-on-one if you can. And sometimes I know that can be tricky because I'll hear this sometimes from clients where they're like, well, what this person does really bothers me, but I don't know how or when to talk to them about it because I only ever see them in group settings. That just feels really weird to then try to bring something up in a situation where there's like always other people around. So I don't know if that's this listener's case with the stepdad. But yeah, whether it's sending a text or whether it's trying to pull him aside at a family get together real quick, or whether it's, if it wouldn't feel again too weird, to be like, hey, I'd like for us to go sit down for coffee, or like, trying to get him alone to do a Dear Man, right? Like do a Dear Man script about how you are deciding that you are not going to engage in conversations with him about your husband. Now, Dear Man, as the skill goes, can be used to either make a request or to tell somebody no. So you could pick, listener, which way you'd want it to go. Either the request could be, please don't say negative things about my husband to me, right? That could be the request. Or it could just be sort of telling him and setting up the boundary of, I don't feel comfortable with that. Well, no, I guess I'm basically saying the same thing. As I'm saying it out loud, I think I'm saying the same thing. It sounded like two different things in my head, but I think it's really the same thing, which is that I don't want to engage in conversations with you like this. So practice your script and make sure all the components are there, right? The reinforce here, I sometimes feel like the R is the trickiest part. Sometimes it's really obvious. Sometimes it's super difficult. I feel like the reinforce here is to be able to say, like, I think it will really help me feel more comfortable, like around you or at family gatherings or that kind of a thing. Maybe the stepdad doesn't care, but that's the closest I can get. And of course, the guy. So if you think there's another reinforce that's more personal to him, by all means, use it. But after you have the Dear Man conversation with him, the truth of the matter is he's probably going to continue to do it. Like, let's get real. This sounds long standing. This sounds like it's been going on for a long, long time. And this may just be how this man, the stepdad, moves through the world. He might just be this way with a variety of people. So again, it's less about expecting him to not speak this way and more about you feeling prepared for what you're going to do when he does. And so if it happens, right? Couple family gatherings later, he pulls you aside and he's just like, I don't know how you deal with him, kind of a thing. Then you get to say, hey, I told you these are conversations I don't want to engage in. So I'm going to ask that we talk about something else. Once you've set a boundary the first time, the beauty of that is that you get to come back to it. You get to say, hey, remember, we talked about this. So this is the decision that I'm now going to make. And that will hopefully help you feel better in the moment when it's happening. It's still going to be really hard because it's you changing the song and dance, but you will have already informed him in the Dear Man conversation of what that's basically going to look like. Another thing I was curious about, because you're sitting here writing to us saying, I can't keep sitting back and watching this unfold. Like, I don't want to cause a rift in the family. I don't want to embarrass my husband, but like, this is super hard for me. It made me wonder if you and your husband have talked about if he would want you to publicly defend him and if that would be helpful. I can see that going either way. I have certainly been with partners where they have been like, oh my gosh, I don't like this, that, or the other about your mom. You know, I want to say something. And I've had times where I'm like, oh man, please don't. That would make it so much worse and more stressful for me. And then there's also been times where I'm like, no, actually, I think I could really use some backup. And that is something that I've been wanting to say for a long time, but it's felt like too much to have it be just my voice. So maybe if it's both of our voices, I'd actually really appreciate that. So I don't know what way it would go for your husband. For the record, I think it would be amazing if he got himself into therapy. If he's at all open to that, because the dynamic that you're describing here is really damaging. And I can just see how much there's like just codependency going on and like the toll that it's taking on him and like all of the things that you feel concerned about. I mean, I found myself feeling concerned about too for this guy that I have never met and will never meet, right? Like, I don't know you, listener. I don't know your husband, but just reading it, I was like, oh, my heart goes out to him having this be his family of origin dynamic that he's dealing with. So I hope he can get some therapy.
Oh.
Okay, your turn, Kate.
Okie dokie. Yeah, it's interesting, Michelle. I think you did a wonderful job basically answering a little bit more specifically the question of what to do in this case with this person. So I am answering more the very generalized questions above of what do you do when you don't even think someone deserves it, right? Like anything good or nice or whatever. So one thing that really helps me a lot during, well, a lot of my life, but especially when I'm faced with situations like that or with interacting with people that I feel that way about, listener, is to remember the inverse of the common phrase, how people treat you says more about them than it does about you, which is how you treat people says more about you than it does about them. Only reminding that, for myself, basically. Right, this really helps me get out of thoughts like what, this person does or does not deserve. Like, why should I even be nice? They're such a dick, right? Because that's like externalizing the locus of control for my behavior. Sorry. Whoa, that was therapy talk. Let's try and back that up a little bit. That's giving someone else control over my decisions, right? In a way that's not real, right? I'm still making the choice, but I'm sort of pushing it out on someone else's behavior. The responsibility for the fact that now I have decided to be a dick, right? And so instead, really focusing in on not what does this other person deserve, but how do I want to treat other people? Yeah. Who do I want to be and how do I want to treat others? That space for me feels like a much more comfortable space to act from and make decisions from. It's not so volatile, and it's still based in my values and morals, etc. So that's a thing that I bring to those sorts of moments when I find myself being tempted to have my behavior be steered by others, but instead bring it back into remembering that it really is just a reflection of me and how I've decided I want to treat the humans around me. And has fuck all to do with what that person actually does or doesn't deserve, right? Also, who am I the fucking arbiter of that? That's probably for me presuming that I know too much. Let's see, where am I? Lost myself in my notes. Oh, right. I agree with what Michelle was saying about seeing if your husband wants you to defend him and kind of going from there. I certainly have a complicated relationship with the concept of my partners defending me, for instance, to my mother. So I can imagine your partner might very much appreciate that conversation. And last but not least, and feel free to tell this suggestion to go fall off a cliff, but if you're really just trying to figure out how the fuck do I maintain being in a presence with this person when I really don't want to, and that really is your goal, you might try practicing some loving kindness meditations that include your stepfather. So less about his behaviors and choices and more about just that shared humanity, right? And how can recognition of that shared humanity help you sit with a little bit more comfort, potentially in his presence. So those are my thoughts.
Okay. This next one's a little on the shorter side.
It is.
It says, what skills do you use when there is so much change and the person you relied on lets you down and leaves your life, and the new person who comes in screws you over straight away? Anger is building and an emotional wall is truly being built.
Oof. There's so little
packs a punch.
detail here, right, to like go off of. And yet also you can tell that that's just like there's so much contained, right, in that short message. Though the paucity, the lack of details makes it a little bit hard to give really specific advice, but the first thing that came to my mind was just, this sounds like a lot of distress tolerance is needed. Right? This is the exact kind of situation in which distress tolerance was meant to thrive, right? Like this is its time to shine, is when there are circumstances beyond your control and beyond your choice, that are having huge emotional impacts on you, right? I'm pulling out some of my favorites. I would suggest accepts or self-soothing, but that's because those are a couple of my favorite ways to do distress tolerance. If you have other skills that you are more of your go-to in that realm, please feel free to head that way. Another thought that I had was that if you're finding yourself engaging in negative self-talk or being judgmental, as can sometimes happen, right? When we are screwed over by people or have these serious relational issues, it can be tempting to get into a place of, what did I do to deserve this? What did I do? Sort of the inverse of the question we were asking above, right? This real self-doubt about maybe I'm the reason that I'm getting treated this way kind of thing. And so instead, to practice being mindful a little bit more and checking the facts for self-reassurance, right? There's how people treat you says more about them than it does about you, right? We're back at the other side of the coin in this listener's question, which truly is, right? Whatever the person that you relied on upon most, whatever decisions they made, and the person who screwed you over, they were the ones making those decisions, and they were doing it because of who they are, not because of who or what you are or did. It really, as much as they may try to blame it on you, we are all responsible for our own decisions. So really trying to practice mindfulness and checking the facts to stay grounded in that. And my last thought is, I phrase it, just decide how you want to fuck up. I hope this is a concept I've talked about before, but a quick rundown is just, okay, right. So how do you want to fuck up, right? After this, you have the choice of sort of closing up, having overly rigid boundaries, maybe being less trusting, or continuing to put your trust in new people and be open to new relationships and risking getting fucked over again, right? I personally don't think there is an objective right to that, but it is something to really consider, is, again, who do you want to be and how do you want to move through the world? And kind of finding the behaviors that are in alignment with that, as opposed to just the behaviors that are in alignment with whatever the emotionality is of the moment.
I think we're going to wind up saying about the same things in probably just slightly different ways. Because, I agree with everything you're saying here. And, as you named, this listener has a choice about how trusting they want to be moving forward. And I wanted to start with a good amount of just like validation and empathy for like, this can make experiences like this can make it really hard to feel like you can trust people moving forward. It's not easy. And so just to be understanding if that is the place you're in where you're just like, nope, not up to trusting anybody right now. Okay. That's all right. You get to be there. And if that changes in the future, then that changes in the future. The way that I put it in my notes, I'll just read it verbatim. And again, this is very much in alignment with what Kate was saying, is it's shitty for people to treat us shitty. And it's also on us to decide how we move forward after. Yeah, because Kate, you've been speaking to this pretty nicely of like, yeah, we can just stay there. We can perseverate on how things should have been, how wrong the other person was, which really takes us down the path of being in a victim mentality, or we get to look at what the options are for what happens next. And anytime that we are reminding ourselves that we have choice, we have options, that hopefully will lead to a sense of feeling empowered. I think of this sometimes, like I've talked about this before with my clients, and like with a random example of, let's say somebody loans you, or you loan somebody money. They're like, hey, can I borrow $100? I'll pay you back. And you're like, sure. And you give them the money. And then guess what? They don't pay you back. And you may try and you may try and you may try to get that money back. And they just may not pay it back. And you get to then decide what you do from there. And different people go different directions with that idea, right? Some people would just talk about it till the end of time of like how wronged they were, which like, yeah, they were. That is wrong, right? The same way that like, it sucks that this new person came into your life and screwed you over, right? That sucks. You can stay in that anger and ruminate in that, or you can explore where your options are, which is again what a lot of people do. Of like, okay, well, I'll try this, I'll try that, in terms of like how to maybe get them to repay me. And maybe they do, or maybe they don't. And if they don't, then there's some radical acceptance that needs to come on board. And I feel like that's something that may be in alignment here with what you need, listener, is that it is so unfortunate that you got screwed over and really like let down by two people who meant a lot to you. And the quicker that you can radically accept like that this really happened, and as Kate was saying, like it's not necessarily anything you caused or you did or anything like that, but just the quicker that you can get there, then hopefully it will help you to be in a better place with yourself and not like kicking yourself about this situation. And then once you can be in a place of accepting yourself, right? Like with the money example, just being like, you know, I made the best decision that I could at the time. That was a person that I really thought was trustworthy. I didn't have a reason to not trust them. And I really believed they would pay me back the money. And it sucks that they didn't, but I also don't feel like I did anything wrong. I just get to decide what I do moving forward, right? And again, maybe you don't loan people money anymore. Okay. Or maybe this is where it goes back to like Kate said, like decide how you want to fuck up. Maybe it's like, I'm never doing that again. Or maybe it's like, you know what? I'm going to kind of assume that was a one-off. And I want to be giving and generous. And so I'm okay with continuing to take my chances and see what happens. And there could also be maybe a middle path there where it's like, well, I might still loan people money, but maybe I might be more discerning about who it is or have more of like a plan B of like what to do if they don't pay me back the way we initially agreed to or things like that. But you take it as, it sounds super cliche, but you take it as a lesson and you integrate it into future decisions that you're going to make in your life. And that's the best outcome you can hope for, even when there's a lot of hurt happening right now.
Okay, I like that. Though don't rush through the anger. I guess that's the only addendum I would say is
yeah.
don't stay there. Also, don't rush it.
Yep. It makes sense that it would be there for a while.
Yep.
Not forever, but
Yep.
for a while.
But not forever. Exactly. The balance, right? Like so many things in DBT, finding that middle ground.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. On to the next one. I have a gay man who's been diagnosed with BPD, and I think I've been doing well with finding the gray area in general, but there's a sort of major thing I'm struggling with regarding this. I struggle with wanting to see the gray in abusers who have no guilt or remorse. I can certainly see the gray in that perhaps they were abused themselves and are acting out based on their temperament and their environment, and therefore are not the quote-unquote monster I want to see them as. But is there ever a tipping point where the actions of the person go beyond simply seeing the gray in their situation, where black and white is perhaps warranted?
Yeah. We've had similar questions to this before in the past. This is a really common dilemma that I think people struggle with, which is that there are people in this world who do atrocious, awful things to others. And what are we supposed to do with those people, right? Like, how do we decide to, if it's somebody that we know personally, like be in a relationship with them, if at all, or even if it's people we don't know, how exactly as this listener is talking about, like, how do we see the gray? I don't think the goal is to see the gray necessarily. Like, they're like, where is like black and white warranted? I view this as it is black and white. And what I will explain there is that it is true, by and large, that people who do absolutely awful things, generally speaking, it is extremely rare, if not like doesn't ever happen, that person had like a great childhood, that they were not ever abused, right? You can understand, like the listener saying, of like, I can see why they're acting out based on their temperament and their environment. Okay, that is one part. And then the other piece is that, like, you do not ever have to say that it is okay. You do not have to use that to try to justify or have empathy for them or like, quote unquote, like give them a pass or anything like that. You can say just that those two things are true. Yes, you got here potentially for these reasons, and it is not okay. And I do see you as a monster, right? To use the term they used, right? Like, this person maybe is a monster. Like, we can understand both, if that makes sense, and not feel like you have to pick and choose, because a lot of times it really is both. I think the thing, depending on, again, if this is a situation where you maybe have personal experience with this listener, like you were abused by people or someone you love was terribly abused by people, I think it is really important under those circumstances, like I was saying with one of the listeners earlier, of like, what are your goals here? Is your goal to maintain self-respect, or is your goal to maintain a relationship? There are people that have been abused and they have it as a goal that they want to be able to forgive their abuser, or they want to be able to more or less, like, I mean, especially if it is circumstances where the abuser is expressing remorse, they want to be able to reach a place where they're like, okay, like, I don't hate you anymore, or that kind of a thing. Or I'm okay seeing you in passing here. Like, I don't want to be close to you, but I'm okay to some degree of having a relationship with you. Okay. Like, for some people, that's the goal. And for other people, that is not. And it does not have to be. It's perfectly okay to say, my goal is not to forgive this person. My goal is to be able to see fully and clearly the harm that they caused me, and to just name it wasn't okay, and to stick to that. That is okay too. So yeah, it just depends on what you would want to get if you're thinking about people that, again, have personally abused you, or that have abused others that you know. So all just random things I was thinking about here, but I was just really leaning into like dialectics. In a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, I think that you're sort of around the money, Michelle. My first thought was that this person really is kind of already finding the gray area.
Right. They kind of named it.
Where, it is okay to label certain behaviors as simply unacceptable, right? DV, for instance, while still understanding that just like literally all human behavior, whatever that unacceptable behavior was, it has its own causes that could potentially warrant compassion. But bare minimum, it has its causes, right? That's
just true.
That's just true, right? And so you can appreciate, like, yep, this is not just an acausal weirdness in the universe, and also this behavior is antithetical with being in my world, right? Like, this is not. You don't have to see the gray in the behavior to see the gray in the world that caused the behavior, I guess, is maybe the place I'm going with that. One big thing that I would encourage is to work on finding a balance with compassion. This is something I can struggle with sometimes, where trying to make sure that it isn't leading you to stay unhealthily connected, or accept unacceptable behaviors. There can be, I'm going to call out myself and all therapists really in this moment. I think in our profession especially, there can be a propensity to be like, but I understand. It's like, that's nice. Keep understanding. That is in alignment with who you are. Understand the shit out of that, but don't tolerate it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And so really making sure that you don't think that compassion has to equal literal acceptance, not radical acceptance, but literal, like, yep, that's okay, seal of approval, right? It does not, right? You can have compassionate and up one side and down the other for why a person is behaving the way they are, and still set boundaries around that person and or those behaviors, right? Boundaries matter and are worth it. And setting them really doesn't mean that you're leaving the gray, right? You can absolutely set boundaries within the gray of understanding that this is bad and it has its own causes. So
nice. Okay, this next one is one of our longer ones that we're reading today. It says, I have a history of a very, very severe eating disorder that nearly took my life, on top of borderline personality disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and major depressive disorder. I began having troubles with weight and self-hatred around age 7 with bullying at gymnastics practice, and started thinking people would like me more if I was thin, since they loved the meanest girl at practice who was super tiny. The bullying drove me to want to take my life at age 10. Looking back on pictures, I was actually extremely thin. My family used to call me stick woman, and when that stopped, it just solidified the delusion that I was large. Being a phenomenal gymnast was all I had to make up for people hating me so much. A few years after quitting, I went downhill and was in and out of eating disorder and medical hospitals for all of my 20s. At the end of that decade, I was able to go from 89 pounds to 130 pounds. However, I'm still really struggling with body image and body dysmorphia and acceptance, despite forcing myself to maintain my weight for a few years now. It was like going through puberty again, and my body has changed a lot in my 30s, along with multiple major joint injuries. I've busted my ass for years and am finally in a place in life where I have a lot to lose. My therapist diagnosed me with eating disorder not otherwise specified, which was a wake-up call, and I do feel that I'm backsliding. I don't want to lose everything again. I wholeheartedly agree with my psychiatrist who said that learning to accept my body and truly recover starts with accepting and knowing myself first. Which brings me to the biggest problem. I don't know who I am or how to get to know myself. I have hated myself so much for so long that I honestly don't even understand the concept of self-love. Those words are contradictions to me. I think an episode mentioned starting with self-tolerance, which sounds more reasonable at this point. How do I start to get to know myself so I can even understand who I'm trying to tolerate?
I love this question.
It's so great.
Much. Though also lots of sadness for the struggle that is being indicated, and also just a hard sense of connect, right? I would say that for most of all the way through my 20s, really, I think into my early 30s, I would have said I had a substantial relationship with self-loathing. And I think it was plausibly probably me who brought up the self-tolerance idea, because that's a thing that I lean into hard. So yeah, definitely lots of empathy and understanding, listener. Part of that similarity journey, I guess, for me is that I also used to think that I didn't know myself. That was, which is, isn't it fascinating that we can simultaneously say, I hate myself and I don't know myself, and that what in the fuck buckets are you hating then? Like, anyway, I've lived in that space. I know that the experience is not contradictory, but when you say it out loud, isn't it very silly? What are you hating then? But I definitely have been in that space. I don't know if this fits for you or not, listener, but one of the things that I know, kept me in that place of feeling like I didn't know myself was that I was allowing other people to really tell me who I was. And then the lack of the sense of like a good fit of their descriptions on my sense of myself really caused me to feel very confused. And I think that did a lot to lead to my sense of not knowing myself, and also to my not liking myself, because there was this idea that I didn't fit this image that was being painted of me by others, which instead of me seeing the fault in their description, I saw the fault in my being, right? But to try and answer the question as asked of how do you start to get to know yourself, to even understand who you're trying to tolerate, some of my suggestions are to look for yourself in your opinions. What movies do you enjoy? What politics do you hate? What season brings you comfort? What holiday is your favorite, etc.? To look for yourself in your physical responses to things. What makes you tense? When and where do you exhale and relax? What makes you feel like lethargic or drained? And when do you feel energized? Look for yourself in your values and your morals. I think values inventories can really help us discern what matters to us. And, well, not lastly, just lastly on my list, a suggestion to look for yourself in your own definition of what makes a good person. The vast majority, in fact, every human I think that I've ever met, has all been trying to be at least as close to in alignment as we can be to whatever we think is good. So look at what you think a good person is and notice with all probability that you're trying to be that, and that gives you a starting place to see who you are and what matters to you. And then last but certainly not least, skill-wise, I'll add to what Michelle suggests below, checking the facts, right? So, I don't know, when you're having a bunch of negative self-talk and or issues potentially with body image or things like that, can you check the facts to help reassure yourself of what reality is and notice where you're storytelling. Effective rethinking and paired relaxation. Especially if you have fairly well-rehearsed negative self-talk, it can be helpful to pick a new way to think about yourself and help pair that with your body, getting a chance to relax. If you've heard me talk about them before, mala beads, I think, could also be useful here in that regard. Picking new self-talk mantras and repeating them mindfully. And lastly, but not leastly, opposite action, at least for potentially for some of the eating disorder behaviors, depending on what they are. Though I want to be very clear, opposite action here doesn't necessarily mean doing the literal opposite thing, but just acting in opposition to those urges. So for instance, if you're wanting to purge, to not, right? To maintain, so maybe more ride the wave. There you go. I'm changing my skill suggestion, not opposite action, ride the wave. I want that one instead. That's funny. I felt like I was going to have more to say about that one, but mostly I just really love the idea, and I want to give listeners some signposts of where to look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had great suggestions there. One of them, I was also thinking of just starting with, as best you can, very low stakes decisions about things and paying attention to your choices. Yep. When you were saying things like, what movie did you enjoy? Oh, yeah. That kind of a thing. Listener, if you're sitting down to watch a movie, you are making a choice. right? Are you going to watch romantic comedy? Are you watching a horror film? Are you watching like, what are you gravitating towards? It gives you information about yourself. And I heard some statistic the other day. I can't remember what it was. I mean, we literally make thousands.
I know.
Thousands and thousands of decisions every day.
Yeah.
So if you can just start tuning in and being like, well, what am I choosing? That can give you some good information. The other thing, and I don't know, maybe this is important to say this, right? Like, I've mentioned this before in other Q&As. Kate and I, when we're responding to listeners, we want to give a plethora of choices most of the time, right? Different skills you can pick from, different things you can do. Especially in this case, listener, I don't want you to try to do all of this at once.
No, fuck no.
Like, every so often, that disclaimer really needs to be said.
That's
again.
fair.
Don't try to do this all at once. Pick one thing to start with. So with my other suggestion that I was thinking of, another option available to you is to really practice some mindfulness of your emotions. The same way that you are making decisions all day long, consciously or unconsciously, you're doing it, because we all are, as we are alive and awake and moving through the world. You are also feeling an emotion every moment of every day. Now, sometimes our emotions are really big and really loud, and sometimes they're very quiet and hard to notice. But you are always feeling something emotionally. And so another path to feeling like you're getting to know yourself is to get to know what emotions feel like for you. When you feel angry, how does that show up? When you feel sad, what do you do? What makes you feel really calm? What leads to you feeling excited? What scares you? Like, start paying attention. Because again, that's going to give you really good information. And depending on, again, what kind of information you want to know, I think Kate and I here are both giving you choices where, like, some information might, I don't know, feel a little more surface level, right? If you're literally like, I don't know what my favorite color is, see what you like, see what you gravitate towards. But I understand that maybe that's what you're looking for, and maybe it's not, right? Maybe you're like, guys, come on. I know my favorite color is green. Like, I know my favorite movies. I know my favorite this. I know my favorite that. But, like, who am I on the inside? If that's what you're after, then yes, start to notice what your emotions are on the inside, right? You could generally categorize this into either, like, what lights you up or what, like, closes you off, really. Because I heard it explained this way one time, and I think a book I read that, like, pretty much anything in life, we either open to it or we close. We either like it and want more of it, or we're like, nah, wasn't a fan.
Approach or reject, I think is the way I've thought of it before.
Yeah, there's so many ways.
Move you towards or away from. Everything you feel moves you towards or away from.
Exactly. Yeah, there's so many different phrases and terminology about this concept. But start to notice that for yourself, and your emotions are what's going to guide you with that. Because, if something is leading you to feel, I don't know, scared, sad, angry, disgusted, right? You're probably going to maybe be wanting to move away. But if something leads to you feeling anything in the joy family, you're going to want to move towards. So just notice. And then kind of like I feel like this will actually be pretty advanced for this listener. You were touching on a little bit, Kate, when talking about, like, values inventory and things like that. But yeah, the A from ABC listener, that is, I feel like, going to be like I would put it as maybe like a goal of a skill, not one that I would necessarily recommend starting with for you, but one that I think you could tremendously benefit from if you really took a deep dive into it. But I want to acknowledge that may be very hard for you to do. But yeah, could be a good direction to like kind of point your internal compass towards. Is like, okay, both the short-term and long-term aspects of that, I think, is really what you're after here. So that is another skill that I think could be helpful just to add it to the mix, because you have a lot that you can comb through and pick from there.
All right, on to the next one. This one reads, "Hello guys, I'm working really hard on my BPD disorder / traits in therapy, and things have gotten better for a while. Now, the problem is that I am really sensitive when my partner / significant other / boyfriend is changing his voice, tone, words, or such. He is a really calm and stable person. You know, we are hyper aware of this. Every time his voice tone changes, it makes me think that there is something wrong, that the relationship has changed and such. So I question him to see if everything is all right. I know it comes from past trauma when I had to guess the mood of the person to see if everything would be all right. What is your advice to not do this and to feel more safe in a relationship? I'm not jealous at all, I'm not possessive or anything. I just have fear that something will happen, that I'm a bad person, or that he will go away because of me."
This is such a common struggle. You are not alone, listener. Oh, man. I'm sure you've had a number of clients bring similar things to you, Kate, where they're just
absolutely, yeah.
Yep. They're just like, I know this is my past shit. Like, I know this isn't this person, but like, I've had it with every other person before them. So now I'm assuming it's going to be them too. And how can I stop doing that and just like, let this good thing be good? Kind of an idea. So I'm going to give a DBT answer, and then I'm going to give a non-DBT answer. So my DBT answer is you want to check the facts. This is a perfect scenario for check the facts. Specifically the question within the check the facts skill of asking yourself, what is, right, am I assuming a threat, is I think how they phrase it. And you get to say probably almost every time, yes, right? You're assuming a threat when his voice tone changes. Now, is there a threat or is there not? That's what the skill is for, is to help you comb through that, right? And determine that to see if your emotion fits the facts in that moment. Now, my non-DBT answer, I think it would be really interesting to ask yourself in those moments when his voice does change, what do you need to feel safe, right? You are perceiving it as unsafe in some way. And what do you need to help you feel like securely attached with him in those moments? I could imagine a number of things. So I'm just going to throw out some random examples. Maybe what you need is for him to be able to like tell you what's going on, right? Like take the initiative there. I know that's something that like I would find super helpful, is that if somebody normally talks to me in a tone of voice like this, and then one day they're coming in and they're talking to me in a tone of voice like this, if they were able to just say like, to be honest, I'm feeling really frustrated about this thing you said the other day. Or if they were to be like, this isn't you, this is just a super shitty day at work that I'm trying to come out of. Whatever it is, can you just tell me? Can you be aware enough of yourself to then tell me, hey, I see this tone of voice changing as well. I'm aware that something's going on in me, and I'm going to make that explicitly known to you because you can't read my mind. So I'm going to tell you why my body language and my tone of voice is shifting. That would help a lot, potentially. Or maybe what you need is that when you do check in with him, of like, hey, everything okay? You want to feel like he's going to be okay receiving that question from you. How many times, at least I've had it many times, I'm sure lots of us have we had that time where we try to check in with someone and you're like, hey, is everything all right? They're like, everything's fine. Right? Or it's just like, I don't know why you're asking me that. Nothing's wrong. Or like they don't like, it becomes clear anyways, it seems, that they don't like that we ask the question. But how different would it feel if you were like, oh, I actually feel like I'm with a partner. Then when I ask the question, they're good with it. They don't get upset with me for my curiosity. They don't get upset with me for me trying to connect and understand what they're going through. That would probably also help you feel good and safer. So there's a healing that needs to happen here for you, listener, right? Like you said, it's because of past trauma. Your partner didn't cause this, but because this is now the person that you're in a relationship with, the two of you together have an opportunity for you to heal from this if your partner will join you. One thing that could be really helpful for you, I love this book. I've probably recommended it before on the podcast. It is a great introductory book to attachment styles. If you don't know anything about attachment styles, everybody, I believe, can benefit tremendously from knowing their attachment style. And this is work that I'm super passionate about. So the name of the book is simply called Attached, by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller, because you, listener, may likely have an anxious attachment style or disorganized attachment style because of all the stuff you've gone through in your past. And I don't know, of course, anything about your partner's attachment style. I could even be off base when I'm assessing yours, but that's just what I glean from reading this. But especially if you are in a relationship with somebody who has an avoidant attachment style or also a disorganized attachment style, the two of you are going to need to educate yourselves about what your attachment styles are and how each of you can start to show up in a more secure way for each other. I'll end this by saying, and Kate may keep this conversation going in her response, but I just want to name, and I think maybe the listener would even agree with this, that it is okay that your partner gets to have emotions and express them, right? Our tones of voice do change depending on how we're feeling, right? If I'm, say, scared, my voice may start to sound like this. It is something. Our body language communicates 80% or something of total communication. It's huge. So it's okay that his tone of voice is shifting. It's okay that his body language is shifting depending on what he's feeling. My sincerest hope is that, again, he's finding a way to express it to you in a healthy way. And, the fact that you said he's really calm and stable sometimes, and Kate, I think you probably feel this with me sometimes the most calm and stable among us, Kate's like, whoa, that kind of rocked you a little bit, Michelle, right? Whenever there's something that I share with you where I'm
it's disconcerting.
Yep. And then I'm like, whoop. And then I kind of had this meltdown moment. You're like, oh, you don't have those very often. I'm like, well, yeah, I did. And you've actually said, you're like, I'm kind of glad you were having a meltdown moment because it was warranted. And I'm like, well, thank you. So especially I feel like too, if your boyfriend is normally fine, not fine, you're going to pick up on it even more. But also finding ways to let him know that it is okay for him to show you when he's not fine, as long as he's doing it in a healthy way. That's good, actually, that he's showing.
It is. I like that. Yeah, I was thinking a little bit about that and a little bit also about just how is this listener doing the checking in, right? On its face, just as a concept of check in with your partner about what might be going on when you notice a change in their tone of voice or, wording, etc. On its face, that's a great idea. Also, it can be done both healthily and horribly. And so really paying attention to how you're executing that can matter a lot. Right, there's a big difference between are you mad at me? Or what did I do? What did I do wrong? Right, that's a very different thing than hey, it seems like your tone of voice just shifted there. Anything you want to share about? What's going on? I thought I noticed something there, right? You don't even have to assert that it did happen, right?
Yeah,
just feel I noticed this. I think I noticed this. Is something going on?
Yep.
Right.
And I was thinking too, Kate, even with that example, here the listener is being I'm noticing changes in my partner's tone of voice. But what you're really encouraging the listener to do is make sure you're checking your own tone of voice and your own body language and how you're doing that, checking in.
Yep. When they talk about responding to past trauma, I know at least for me and my clients, and I think humans in general, right, there's a propensity to just regress entirely, right? And so whatever your defense mechanism was at the time that your trauma was happening, you're likely to slip into a similar state. So I don't know whether it's something whether you shut down or lash out, or hundreds of other different things. That's going to be likely that you react in a way that you're not necessarily as happy with if you're not taking the time to be deliberate about how you're responding, and to sort of check yourself and remember, again, we're all telling stories and we're all making interpretations. Every now and then I've had people be like, what's wrong? And I'm like, nothing. Right? Like, I have no idea what you just noticed, but I didn't notice it in me. Right. And so maintaining a genuine curiosity and an openness to having been wrong, right, about what we did or didn't, what you did or didn't notice. Maybe that you noticed something is true, but how you interpret it was incorrect, right? We're all humans, and so we can have different responses to the same things, or the same responses to different things, etc. So trying to maintain a healthy, honest, curious kind of manner going into checking in, and I think it can still be a really great thing. Speaking of sort of how you talk with your partner, I encourage pretty much any relationship dynamic to look at having conversational safe words, right? So if you notice yourself getting really triggered, right, or flooded, etc., and you're worried you're not going to be able to, conduct yourself the way you want to because of that, being able to be, have a safe word that pauses things so that you can take a second to regroup and maybe inquire in the way that you want to. Or if you just notice things are changing in them and you need a pause, right? Like there's, depending on what it is, either person can pull that right out of their pocket when they need the conversation to stop, and the conversation stops and then comes back together again at an agreed upon time afterwards. I'm sure I've talked about it more. I don't want to go on and on about relationship, about conversational safe words, but I do think they can be a really helpful tool in helping folks slow things down in conversations, especially if there can be a propensity to have really quick and hard onset emotional responses. Opposite action it could be really helpful for you here, listener, I think, for your urges, potentially at the time when you're thinking things have changed in your relationship or things like that, right? You mentioned BPD, and one of the, at least fairly common, not ubiquitous, but hallmarks of it is that issue with senses of abandonment, etc., are being lost, and that can trigger some pretty intense behaviors sometimes, or urges. And so just trying to be really aware of what those might be and not necessarily giving into them. I keep thinking opposite action here today, and probably every time now I've actually meant to, I don't know, ride the wave or urge surfing, or something a little bit that direction. Talk about conversational safe words. Consider potentially using Dear Man to ask your partner to clarify what's going on in a non-inflammatory way if you need it to be a little bit more structured to help yourself through it, as opposed to just trying to have the, all right, am I being curious and open kind of mindset. And definitely, as always, I don't know, is there a time that we wouldn't suggest mindfulness if we were thinking hard enough about it? I sort of feel like it's the start and end of DBT and DBT tools at the base of most things. And so just really trying to settle in, though, on realizing what is true right now and working to strip away interpretations and judgments, and just be noticing. I think those were my things.
Next one says, tonight I have to see the friend who has blocked me and will not even look at me for reasons I don't fully understand. I get very anxious and upset every time I have to see them, but there are a lot of people there, so I don't want to cry again. I'm trying to prepare using the cope ahead skill, and I have friends who have said they will stick with me to try and distract me from her, but are there any other skills I should think about using in this situation?
Well, first of all, just a round of applause for picking out cope ahead. That is a great skill for what this listener is describing. So well fucking done to begin with. And great job engaging a support system, right? And having friends who are there to try and help you be more intentional, a little bit more skillful, etc. So first of all, just well done you, listener. I also was thinking that I can imagine using some push away from accepts might be helpful here, right? You're like talking about, the listener was talking about not wanting to cry again. That being said, if this is something that's a really big emotional response, you don't want to just tell yourself you're not allowed to have that emotional response and not give it the validation and the time and the space and the honor that it deserves. And so instead, if you find yourself getting really activated in the moment and at the event, trying to some version of not now, but later, like emotions, and come back to them, right? Give them their space and time later. But I can understand not necessarily wanting to get wholesale emotional in front of a group of people. And really, honestly, anything from accepts, if I'm thinking about it hard enough, right, just to be distracted, right? You mentioned your friends being there to help keep you distracted also. So maybe front loading them with some ideas from accepts that you know are helpful for you. And that's a little bit harder to do on the download, but I thought a little bit of tip might be helpful in the moment, right? Even if it's just going into the bathroom and splashing some cold water on your face or things like that. You can do pace breathing anywhere, right? So there are ones that you can do a little bit more sub rosa, but those were my thoughts.
Mm-hmm. I also had the initial reaction where I was like, you're doing great, listener. Like, awesome. And so I sat here for a minute. I'm like, well, what else would I recommend? I like what Kate came up with. I like the idea of, being prepared to distract yourself. I was kind of thinking something similar, but maybe just a little bit of different DBT language, which is that when you are there at this event or this gathering where she is going to be there, it may be helpful to set an intention around what you want to be mindful of. What kind of experience do you want to have? What do you want to focus on when you're there? And I think a lot of that actually is with the idea of if you know what you want to focus on, then it will probably distract you, like Accepts does, from thinking about her or, kind of feeling like, I don't know, what metaphor do I want to use? Like, I don't know, there's just kind of like a rain cloud there or like somehow like this mark on you, like on your experience, and makes it harder for you to have a good time or enjoy yourself because she's present. Like if you know what you want to focus on and if you're distracting yourself with that, that will hopefully help quite a bit. I also think it's interesting, Kate, because I think both of us also went to like, you're going to want an emergency skill too in your back pocket, right? Your emergency skill you named was like, you might need tip. And my emergency skill that I was thinking of was like, you might need stop.
That's fair. Yeah.
Which
you can put them together too. Stop and tip. Why not?
They pair super well together because when you are taking that step back, the T and stop, then you can start using some of the stuff in tip that might then help you observe and proceed mindfully with what you do next. But yeah, I was just stoked to hear that like you have friends with you. That's great. And that you were already using Cope Ahead. That is also super good. So yeah, just think about like, where do I want to be focusing my attention? And what am I going to do if, let's say, the worst case scenario happens and she approaches me and I get flooded, or she says or does something really rude to me and I get flooded, then what am I going to do? And how can I make sure I still stay skillful in those moments? I think it's the last one,
right.
Kate.
I was just going to say that. I think we're on to the last one now. All right. This one reads, I need some help. My husband is a hard guy. He comes across as harsh and disrespectful a lot of the time. He does not mean to, and honestly, I'm not sure he has the ability to come across any differently. Also, I am a highly sensitive person. His tone and his mannerisms are very triggering to me. What are some skills or some tips I can use to cope with his ways? I'm not looking to change him anymore. I have tried for the past 18 years, and I don't think it's ever going to change, so I need to learn to cope.
I have a lot I could say. A lot I could say. The thing I want to start with distinguishing, though, here, which seems really important, because we just read, this other listener email that's like, hey, my partner, his tone of voice changes and it's triggering for me. And so I don't want to be triggered as much. And I just want to name that this listener and that listener are, at least on the surface, in entirely different situations. The first one was saying he's a generally calm and stable guy. And I'm aware that I have a lot of trauma that's predisposing me to perhaps overreact to things that aren't actually problematic here. That was the first listener. This one here that we're about to respond to is saying, my husband is a hard guy. he comes across as harsh and disrespectful a lot of the time. This is different. I'll also name this here because I really want to own, in the therapy world, we call it countertransference. What countertransference is that when we have a client that we're working with and they're bringing something up that really hits close to home for things that we are dealing with personally, as a therapist, we try to not have this happen, but it can absolutely color and inform how we respond to that person and what directions we guide them in. So I'm just going to name it here that I really relate to what this listener is describing. And Kate and I will be going into this very soon on an episode of The Couch and the Chair where we'll share a lot more personally. But I have ultimately decided to divorce my husband because my husband was also coming across as harsh and disrespectful a lot of the time to me. So I want to respect where this listener is at, which is that this listener doesn't sound like they're thinking about divorce. The way I read into this is that they're basically saying, like, I've been in this relationship for 18 years. I've given up on expecting or hoping that he's going to change. And because I'm not thinking of leaving, I want to figure out how to stay, basically. So different than my situation because I have chosen to leave my marriage. But I'm also going to really call you out on this, listener, like kind of owning my own stuff. But I'm like, ooh, I'm really struggling when you say that you need to learn to cope with his ways. Because how I interpret that is what this listener is saying is, how do I tolerate his disrespect and continue to stick it out in this marriage that I'm deeply unhappy in? And I'm going to really struggle to support you in that goal. Straight up. I don't know if I want that to be your goal, listener. Like, what I would love for your goal to be is, how can I maintain my self-respect and honor my needs, even if he won't do that for me? That's a different goal. One goal is really focused on him. One goal is focused on you. So if you're open to shifting the thinking here of not like, well, how do I just, continue to kind of cope with it when he disrespects me, but instead looking at like, how do I maintain my self-respect and honor my needs when he is disrespecting me? Like, how do I maybe advocate for myself? How do I bring this into the light and name it when he's being disrespectful? If you shift into that way of thinking, FAST is going to be your friend from a DBT perspective. You are going to want to be using that as much as you can. And assuming that up until this point, for the last 18 years, I don't know if this has been the case, but if it has been, that generally speaking, you just try to like keep the peace, not rock the boat. This is me sitting here saying, I want you to rock the boat. Because if he's been speaking disrespectfully to you throughout much of these years, and you've just kind of been taking it, getting quiet, just trying to freeze or you freeze or you fawn or whatever it is, I want you to change that for yourself. No matter what happens in your marriage, I want you to change that for yourself so that when you're being disrespected by anybody, husband or not, you feel confident enough to say, hey, that's not all right, and to name it. And I don't know what your husband would do or how he would respond if you start doing that more. In a lot of cases, or at least in mine, it made things worse, right? It wasn't like this wake-up call to him. He was like, oh, shoot, yeah, you're right. That was kind of harsh. I'm sorry. Nope. It was like going to dig in my heels a little more on it. And I hope that wouldn't be the case for you, but I know it does go that way sometimes. A non-DBT recommendation is a podcast that has been so helpful for me in my journey of discerning whether or not I wanted to stay married or get a divorce, which is, it's called the Stay or Go podcast. The host really works like exclusively with like women and femme folks. And I don't know this listener's gender. But I think it's helpful for anybody. And she even says, she's like, I know I've got some guys out there listening to this. So it leans a lot more that way, of speaking to women and some of the struggles that people who are socialized and raised as women have. But it's a really great podcast, a really great resource, and I would encourage you to listen to it. Even if at this time you're like, no, I'm not leaving my marriage. Absolutely not. I'm staying. Okay, great. It's called Stay or Go. So if you are planning to stay, it will help you get clarity for yourself on how you can still be doing that, like speaking up for yourself thing that I'm recommending. But you know, if there's any part of you that has also ever had any whispers of, I don't know if I want to really do this for, say, like another 18 years, the podcast could be a really great resource for you. Okay, I'm done. That's a lot. I could keep going.
I'm sure. Well, and I'll take a page out of your book to start with, Michelle, and just know that I also have countertransference here. And so I think we're both sort of speaking to our own angles a little bit in this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I too can relate, and I would echo a lot of what Michelle was suggesting. When I think about how this sort of thing negatively impacts me and what would be protective for me in that case, I was thinking about trying some mindfulness in the form of mala beads. Just some out of my hat examples of potential mantras that seemingly might address some of what this listener was talking about would be things like how he treats me is about him and not about me. His opinion doesn't always matter, or him being angry doesn't equate to my having done something wrong, right? But really working to protect your sense of self and self-worth from the onslaught of that kind of behavior. I do want to make it incredibly clear, similarly, I think, to how Michelle did, that I wouldn't want to encourage you to learn to cope, like, no matter what, just learn to cope with what you're being handed. But I do want you to have tools to improve what your now looks and feels like, no matter what you choose to do in the future, in or with your marriage. And oh, there you go. I didn't write this in my notes, Michelle, but it's one of the things I glommed onto is I'm a highly sensitive person. Because to me, I don't know, highly sensitive person makes me think of the same thing as people who are being told they're overreacting, which I don't believe in. So I would also just gently question whether or not you're a highly sensitive person, or whether or not maybe almost anybody would be bothered to be in a relationship with someone who comes across as harsh and disrespectful consistently. I'm not saying you don't have a, beefy amygdala in your brain and, maybe more intense emotions, but I would certainly question the validity of that assertion that is where much, if any, of the problem lies. It doesn't have to mean you're very sensitive to mean that you'd feel better moving through your relationship with a thicker skin. And so I think that's where my brain is going with the mala beads. It's just this idea of, can you repeat something that helps you feel empowered, right? Whether that be empowered to not be as immediately impacted by what he's saying, or whether it's empowered to end the conversations, whether it's empowered to just hold on to your sense and definition of self, whatever that might be. I'm trying so hard to stop saying I think all the time. Mala beads are something, or anything. I say mala beads because they're a handy, easy way to do it. But anything that makes you repeat a mantra way more times than you'd be interested in doing probably by yourself and without something forcing you to, is useful for thought repetition to help instill new beliefs and different ways of thinking about yourself. So that would be the thing I would add to your armament of fast, etc.
Okay. We're done with our third ever mega Q&A. We're getting the hang of these, I think.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad.
I like it.
All right. So if you have questions for us, you can email us at dbtmepodcast@gmail.com, or make sure you join our Facebook group and you can post your questions there. And then you get feedback from lots of different people. And
Truth.
I say this often. I'm going to say it again. I just continue to be really impressed by our Facebook community. Because I know there could be so many Facebook groups where, I mean, you don't know the people in that group. So it could be very like hit or miss of like, ooh, if I put this thing out there, are people actually going to be supportive and understanding and helpful? And like, by and large, our group, I feel like really, really is. So we want it to be a safe place for you to share what's going on for you. If you don't feel comfortable talking about it with people that you know personally, you can talk about it in a group full of strangers who know a thing or two about DBT and hopefully find some camaraderie and some good advice there. But yeah,
I like it.
Thanks for being here, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Next time.
To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group. Simply log in to your Facebook profile and search for DBT and Me Podcast.